Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
So we wanted to do a stream about this issue. Okay, let's start with, have you ever wondered why the left virtue signals about everything under the sun? Gender identity, trans rights, gay rights, illegal immigrant rights, everything you can possibly virtue signal about except for the issue of human trafficking. We're going to tell you why. We're going to break that down for you. And the main reason is because their platforms are inconsistent and in direct conflict with the platforms that would be combating the issue of human trafficking and sex trafficking in our country. And let's start with the first one. Let's talk about borders. Open borders equals open trafficking. All right. These cartels, these human traffickers that come across the border in Mexico, about 20,000 kids and women that we know of a year are trafficked. And that's just what we know. These are just metrics that we're aware of. You can only imagine, we can only surmise how many of these go unreported that are being trafficked right now in our country. If you look at some of the other statistics, we know that over half of the world's hosted child pornography is hosted in the United States of America. Where are we getting these children that are being tortured and used for rape videos? And sold online and featured on Trafficking Hub, also known as Pornhub. Where are these children coming from? So these stats are just, inklings of information of what we can ascertain is happening. Okay, the epidemic of this problem is so unbelievable. We're going to share some stats, of the research that we.
Well, let's go into all the reasons why.
So you want to talk about the borders right now?
Before we even get into that, I also want to mention, right now we're in a moment where one of the chief things that we see Democratic politicians pushing for is defunding the police. Okay, defunding people who deal with trafficking. Okay, in Los Angeles, they recently made an amendment. They tried to reduce the budget. They did reduce the budget, and that is reducing the amount of money that the Special Victims Unit gets that works on sex trafficking. So you have people who are not going to be trained to do this, working on it, and beyond that, you're going to have less people working on it. So imagine that happening throughout the whole nation, where we already have a major problem with sex trafficking, child sex trafficking, and like she said, child porn.
I want to add
there's all those issues. And if you're fighting law enforcement and you're saying we don't need law enforcement, you're in direct opposition to ending this trafficking epidemic.
Right. I want to add that these human trafficking organizations that help these victims and do these special ops around the world here too, like Operation Underground Railroad, they say themselves that our police need more funding. They need more resources, special departments, special task forces to address this issue. And this issue is so big and so prevalent. And I know media has not covered this. So it's quite shocking to really understand what a big deal this is. So we're gonna share some stats, but I also want to say, so for instance, something like having these special dogs that are trained to search out devices. So these pedophiles keep child porn on these little USB devices, these little electronic devices. They trade it. It's like a Bitcoin system. Okay, these people trade. It's collateral. They trade their porn online. They upload it on Facebook. In 2017, had one child rape video that was viewed over 33,000 times before it was taken down. That's just one. This happens all the time on social media. Traffickers use social media as a platform to do business. One of the great things that Trump accomplished was taking down Backpage. Backpage, over 70% of human trafficking, child trafficking reports with the Center for Missing and Exploited Children came from Backpage. They were doing business on Backpage.
And guess who was against that? Who was against doing that? Elected Democrats were. Right. And it's not hard to figure out why they were against it. They were against it because their platform and the furthest people on the left that control the party, they believe in a platform that holds up sex worker rights. That's what they call it. Honestly, this stuff is unbelievable. If you think back just 10 years ago and you told people that you're going to have mainstream politicians fighting for sex worker rights, you'd be like, you're nuts. But no, they're prioritizing that over trafficked children. And, I think that's what this really comes down to is priorities. They prioritize these other things like sex worker rights. They prioritize illegal immigration over trafficking.
Right.
You know, so their priorities are consistently out of alignment with helping people who are being trafficked. And I'm not just talking about kids, I'm talking about women. You know, grown women are trafficked on a regular basis and used as sex slaves. And that's something that is not, it's not a conspiracy. The numbers are there. Our Department of Homeland Security is aware of this. They work on it. Obama's Department of Homeland Security was aware of it, working on it. You know, this is something that there's an epidemic. We even saw during the Obama administration, they were placing children from the border directly with human traffickers. And there was a big expose done on this, surprisingly by a left-wing paper. I want to say it was, you could look it up. I want to say it was The Atlantic did this, but just search, you know, Obama administration placed children with human traffickers, and you'll see the article come up. And it's incredible. This is just a huge problem. It really is. It's a huge problem. You look at, again, more things. They support Planned Parenthood. You know, Planned Parenthood in itself, you know, it's not, human trafficking is not the first thing you think of when you think Planned Parenthood. But what happens in Planned Parenthood? What have they been caught doing?
Right.
You know, and you can talk about, there was an investigation done, live action, caught Planned Parenthood manager coaching a man and a woman posing as sex traffickers on how to secure secret abortions, STD testing, contraception for underage female sex slaves, and how to make their whole operation look as legit as possible. That manager's name was Amy Woodruff. She worked out of New Jersey's Planned Parenthood Center. She warned this pimp and his prostitute that to have their trafficked underage girls, that they need to make those underage girls lie about their ages to avoid mandatory reporting laws, and advised if they're a minor, just tell them to put down that they're students. For the most part, we want as little information as possible. Who supports Planned Parenthood? Democrats. Okay, again, if you want to end human trafficking, you want to end child sex trafficking, you can't in good conscience vote for Democrats.
No, absolutely. And when you look at Planned Parenthood, you can go to Live Action. They have some great videos. You can see for yourself what goes on there. You know, multiple locations. This isn't just a one-off thing where they're aiding and abetting human traffickers. These pimps come in, they bring in their girls. I mean, they have to hide the evidence of the crime. So they have to have the abortions, they have to get them their birth control, their IUDs, whatever has to happen to keep business going. You realize that they use these free services, right? They're not getting health care plans for their girls, for their products, all right? These girls are used over and over and over. And that's a really good point to touch on, because you wonder why this is such an epidemic. It's because this is the one of the leading illegal crimes that has just skyrocketed in our country. I think it's even ahead of drug trafficking, because a human being can be sold over and over and over again. Once you do the hit of heroin, it's gone. You got to go buy more heroin. A human being, the price margin, the cost is just to use a human being over and over and over. It's very lucrative for these human traffickers. That's why it's the largest criminal growing enterprise in the world right now. So I wanted to touch on ICE really quick before we go back to Planned Parenthood, because I don't want to forget that.
Yeah.
Y'all remember how hard the left went after ICE. In fact, they even did the media covered this raid that they were doing, that the ICE was raiding, and they had protesters out there, saying you're separating families and you're inhumane, you don't have any empathy, you're sending people back. They were literally doing a raid on human traffickers, rescuing girls from this home. And the media is doing a story showcasing Democrats protesting out there, activists. It is unreal. And they've vilified and demonized ICE. ICE, who do you think goes after these human traffickers in these cities that don't have task forces? Why don't they have task forces? Their funding isn't there to have them everywhere. We need it.
And by the way, if any of you have questions, if you have any questions about this subject, or if you're on the left and you have something that you disagree on, we're always open for comments. We will, at the end of this, read through your guys' comments and answer any questions there are and all that. So I saw somebody ask about that. So yes, we will answer questions.
Yes, we just want to get through some of this, this really important research we wanted to share with y'all, because there's a lot of information out there on human trafficking, and you guys can go to plenty of other resources to find the signs and
Center for Medical Progress also has undercover videos that they did, that showed a lot of that Planned Parenthood sells, the baby parts and everything. And Planned Parenthood had to settle in California. So, and then what are Republicans going to do? There's actually a list of all of the things that we've done, Republicans in office, to fight sex trafficking and human trafficking, child sex trafficking. You go to growuplive.com, sign up for the mailing list, and it will automatically send you a list And in that accomplishments list is a list of things that have been done to fight sex trafficking. And I think that you'll be really surprised. There's a lot of things people don't realize. In fact, today, Melania Trump had a meeting. If you go to @WhiteHouse on Twitter, you can watch the live stream. They have set up a commission that is looking into how to reduce sex trafficking and pedophilia in Native American communities, because there were people that were abusing Native American children because it was easier to do it in those communities than in other communities. There was less oversight. So this is a constant thing that Republicans are on, and I appreciate that question because I understand some people could be confused.
Yeah.
Anybody has questions, type them out now. We'll answer them at the end. I just saw that one pop up, and I did want to address it for anybody who's watching that's confused about that.
Right. And also wanted to mention, I will retweet later from my account the Trump list of accomplishments regarding trafficking, that issue specifically, so you can find out exactly what's been done, because we all know the media is not going to tell you. But, you know, just a couple off the top of my head: SESTA and FOSTA, you know, those sex trafficking legislations have been monumental in getting funding and task forces established to go after this issue. There has been no other president that has gone after this issue like Donald J. Trump. And that's one of the reasons, the biggest reasons, that I am voting for him. And I encourage others to do the same. If you care about these children, this is the issue that could be the most uniting issue in our country. Okay. If we can't all agree that we need to save our children and save the children that have been illegally trafficked into our country, that are being used and exploited on our soil, then there's no way we can unite if we can't unite on that issue.
Yep.
So I want to talk about, some hard. Oh wait, we were talking about Planned Parenthood. You covered, you know, the body parts and all that, and I wanted to point out, they say that, you know, they're not actually selling it, you know, but there is a
they've had to pay settlements
system.
out. They had to pay settlements because they were selling the body parts. So if you look, they had to settle with Orange County's prosecutor. There was 7.8, I have it here, I think it's $7.8 million that was paid. They're currently still under investigation by the federal government. It was $7.8 million that they had to pay to Orange County's district attorney. And right now, this SBA has demanded 37 Planned Parenthood affiliates return $80 million in federal relief loans they fraudulently certified they were eligible for, because there was some relation between these places that were doing it with people who took federal money. Again, there's this great lie out there that Planned Parenthood takes federal money that has nothing to do with abortions. It's a lie. You know, the reality is our tax dollars do go towards their rent, goes towards things like that, staff. It subsidizes abortion. Right. Does it pay for an actual abortion? No, it's not earmarked as like, hey, you paid for Susie's abortion, but you paid for the building that Susie had her abortion in. You paid for the receptionist who made the appointment, you know, things like that. So yes, you are subsidizing abortion with your tax dollars. And that should concern people who are even mildly pro-choice. You know, even if you're mildly pro-choice and you have this idea that, you know, oh, well, I prefer people didn't, but I guess it should be there. You should still be upset that your tax dollars are being used for it. You know, that's something that I think that there needs to be more of a conversation about, because you just look at the pure numbers. Even that in itself should be disturbing if you're not already disturbed by baby murder like I am.
Yes. So Planned Parenthood, I want to go after them a little bit more here, because and I want to say, when they are doing these body parts, they call them specimens. You know, they're dehumanizing these babies that are. There's incentives for babies that are born in later term abortions, because their body parts are whole and developed. So they want beating hearts. They want brains that are intact. In fact, they request them. They make special requests. You know, in this abortion, please don't squish their brains and extract them. Keep the brain whole. Deliver it whole, so that they have better specimens. It's disgusting. This is a form of human trafficking. You know, we would be appalled when we find out in other countries, which happens all over the world, these horrible situations where they just bring kids in with no anesthetic, young children, healthy children, and put them on a table. They cut them open. They take their organs and they throw them in a bag. You know, some still with beating hearts, still alive. This still happens. It's just under the guise of healthcare now, right? The language that has been used to seduce and manipulate is disgusting. And I want to piggyback on that. Planned Parenthood, a company that stands to profit off of our daughters' abortions and our sons' abortions, Okay, they're involved too. Um,
And she doesn't mean
and I
our,
don't mean
yeah,
by,
she
because
doesn't mean the way
they
the
can
left
have
does.
them physically. I mean,
The way the left does, they would say, "Oh,
I'm
your
talking
sons
about,
can have babies." They
I'm
can't.
talking about, men that pay for abortions,
Yeah.
men that want their girlfriends to get abortions.
Or
They're
who are
part.
pimps.
They're part of that, or to do nothing to stop it. Okay, do nothing to incentivize the woman not to have it.
Yep.
All right, so they're involved too. And so I want to say that they're a company that stands to profit off of abortion has no business educating on prevention. I mean, it's really think about that for a moment. What we're allowing Planned Parenthood into our school system to educate our children on preventing sex, preventing pregnancy, that stand to profit off of our children becoming future customers. We have allowed Planned Parenthood to come into our schools, and they, under the guise of preventative sex ed or evidence-based sex ed or anti-bullying inclusive sex ed, they have all these fancy names. I want y'all, if you're a parent, please go to stopcsc.org, because you can watch a short
It's the best
video.
thing you could do.
You can watch a short video that goes in depth into these frameworks and what they're
Yeah.
actually teaching, and it's pleasure-based education. This is in alignment with these UN agendas, and the World Health Organization, backs these ideas that kids, these ideas getting pushed are so extreme. They want to teach children that they have a right to be sexual as children, that they have a right to express themselves freely sexually, their right to their pleasure, their right to explore their gender fluidity and their sexual fluidity, and that is a human right, and that your parents have no right to keep you from experiencing those experiences. So they're encouraging children as young as 5 to self-pleasure, to look at obscene materials, to talk about pain as a pleasurable sexual experience, blood play, all this crazy stuff that you have to just really see to believe.
I think that I need to make a point here real quick. Anybody on the left who's watching this, you may be thinking that's fringy stuff. This is on the fringes. This is not on the fringes. And I have to be honest with you. I used to think very similarly to how you're thinking right now. I used to think there's no way all of this stuff is happening. Okay, people are not that sick. They're not that evil. There's no way this is happening. Because for a lot of us, our mind can't process this type of evil. And so the idea this is going on just seems like a crazy, kooky thing, okay? The reality is there's so much evidence this is going on. There's depositions from court. These are actual employees of Planned Parenthood admitting this stuff. We have the evidence at this point. StopCSE.org just breaks down the existing frameworks for sex ed. It's not creating anything out of thin air. There's no conspiracy here. It's using their frameworks and just showing parents what their kids are being taught. What is the framework? How did this framework come to be? Mm-hmm. And the reality is that the really sad part is, beyond the fact this is just so evil, is that if you look at where this all comes from, how do they do this? They use third world countries as testing grounds. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the really evil things is these companies, they're all aligned with the Democratic Party. They're all aligned with the left politically across the world.
And what do they support? The UN agendas.
Exactly. They all support the UN. And, the UN in itself is a whole other conversation. The human rights, if you ever hear anything from the Human Rights Council at the UN, it should be called the Human Rights Abusing Council, because everybody on it is a human rights abuser. The people who, Cuba's on it. Venezuela's on it. China's on it, who has literally 1 million people in concentration camps right now.
I mean,
okay?
It's disgusting. It's unbelievable.
So you have to really look into these agendas. And if you're on the left, I'm not saying you're a bad person because you voted for Democrats in the past. You're not. If you're unaware of this stuff, you're not a bad person. But you do need to do research, because there's a lot of things that you've thought there's no way that's true. There's no way that that's going on, that it is going on, and that there is proof. And I'm not talking about fringy proof. I'm not talking about a meme that says something. I'm talking about actual court documents, actual videos undercover, all this stuff. It exists. It is real. And you need to do your research. So if there's those 3 places I would send you, it would be, the Center for Medical Progress, Live Action, and StopCSE.org. If you want to go further than that, I would say look into the, I'm trying to think what their website. Oh, Operation Freedom. They're a group that helps to fight this. A21 helps fight this. Mm-hmm. And you like Operation Underground Railroad. It's another group that's fighting this. If you want to do something to fight this and combat it. But the number one thing you can do to fight and combat this is to vote for Republicans in office. And I understand there may be other issues you disagree with Republicans on, but what more important issue is there than protecting innocent people from sex trafficking and human trafficking? I don't think there is a more important issue than that. No. You know, and I think that in itself is enough to sway your vote. It should be enough to sway your vote. Right. Because the reality is, this is reality. If you vote for Joe Biden, you vote for Democrats to control the Senate or the House, right, you're going to end up in a situation where I guarantee you, it is a guarantee that sex trafficking and human trafficking will increase under their power, you know, under their reign, if they're in control.
I mean, these are non-negotiables. Not having the resources to fight this issue, having open borders, defunding ICE, things like that. We will not be rescuing anyone doing that. I mean, we need these resources, and we also need good data. The problem, one of the biggest problems that we have is we don't have good reporting and good data. We're assuming things, but we don't know. We don't know how many, say, people in law enforcement are involved in this. We don't know how many judges are involved in this. We don't know if there's a particular hotbed area. You know, we don't have a national database. We now have a national database, a fingerprint system, right, for federal crimes. That's how we've been able to catch so many criminals across county, you know, state borders. We need the same thing for trafficking.
And we're pushing for a mandatory minimum too, right, by the way, with politicians. We're pushing for a mandatory minimum that if you're caught sex trafficking, that you will get life in prison. That in itself creates a new deterrent against sex trafficking, because sex trafficking is a type of crime I do not believe you can be rehabilitated from. If you are able to take another innocent human being and turn them into that and take away their dignity, I don't think you deserve to be out in the world again. I don't think that there's a way to rehabilitate you if you're able to do something that evil.
Right.
So that's something we're advocating for. You know, will we get there? Who knows? I hope we do. If we don't, I hope we get close to that. But we do need more consequences for this type of behavior.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that we can all do, is hold our leaders accountable, you know, local and nationally, and ask them, what are you doing? What legislation are you supporting? How come you didn't support this bill? You know, things like that. That's something huge that we can do. And I want to, you know, go back to Planned Parenthood really quick, because we're jumping around. But again, bottom line is Planned Parenthood seeks to profit by sexualizing and making their customers younger and younger. All right. That's why they're reaching these children at age 5 with these gender frameworks. And this is a worldwide thing. This isn't just Planned Parenthood in the United States. They're doing this on a global scale. They're strong arming small countries like Nauru to deny them federal aid, essentially, by forcing them to accept programs that are not in alignment. Foreign aid, not in alignment with their values. And they do not want this. And you can see these hearings and these countries, their representatives saying, we do not like this framework, we do not want this. And when you actually read, you know, Happy, Healthy, and Hot, which is a program Planned Parenthood wrote that went into Africa to try to help the AIDS crisis. It basically teaches these kids that they don't have to report their HIV status, and that what's more important is their pleasure. Is their sexual rights.
They actually taught them that they don't need to tell their partner.
Framework. And where does that tie into the sex rights activism that happens right now in the U.S.? Okay, they want to legalize prostitution. They want to legalize sex work. They want sex worker rights. This is a problem. And you cannot be for both. It's not logical. It's not sensible.
Well, if you think you can, you're lying to yourself.
You're lying to yourself.
And that's something that, you know, we were talking before we came on today, and we were talking about the title for this, and we were like, is it really, you know, like, do we want to go that explicit with it? Like, and the reality is, we looked at each other, and it's just the truth.
It is.
You can't look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm for this party and I'm also for this, because if you're voting for them, you're enabling this. Right. You're enabling trafficking. You're enabling all this stuff. Now, am I saying Republicans are perfect? Absolutely not. There's somebody like Dennis Hastert, you know, he was an elected Republican, and he was a pedophile, and he's in jail now. But what I'm saying is that overall, if you vote Republican down ballot, they will vote for these things. They will vote for stronger consequences for sex traffickers. They will keep ICE funded. They will keep DHS funded.
Mhm.
They will make sure that traffickers are stopped at the border. They will do all these things.
Right.
So this is important. And I actually saw somebody, and we have a comment feed here. I saw somebody say, "Who the f cares about drama, political bull? It's just drama." It's not. These are people's lives. People are being raped.
These are children.
These are kids who are put in the back of semis with other children, scared, with no parents, nobody who loves them around, then traded around with other people who don't care about their dignity or their humanity, and they're used like they're toys. Okay. And then in a lot of cases, they're killed. So it's not drama. It's not just, a distraction. It's not one of those things, oh, my vote doesn't matter. It does matter. One of the chief things that has slowed sex trafficking and slowed human trafficking has been the fact that Trump was elected. Had Clinton been elected, we would not be seeing the type of enforcement we're seeing at the border, the initiatives that have been taken, shutting down Backpage. None of these things would have been done had Hillary been president. So this isn't just politics. It's not just drama. This is reality. This is people's lives, kids' lives.
So I also want to make a point. So many of the kids that go missing are from our foster care system, all right, which is broken. I encourage you guys to watch that episode we did on CPS, but so many of them go missing. And what does that mean? That means there's no record of them anymore. Nobody's looking for them. If nobody's looking for them, then the crime that is committed against them is invisible. So if that's happening to our foster care kids, what's happening to the kids? They're coming here illegally. There's no documentation of them. They're not stopped. They're not required to find out who they are. And that's what the whole family separation thing comes in, because they love to talk about that. But what you're doing is you're separating children from their traffickers and making sure they're with who they say they're with, who's claiming them.
I can explain this part really well because I'm Latino. So let's just get that out of the way. I see some people on the left, they get upset when you talk about this if you're not the right, race, or you're not the right lineage. So I am Latino. My mom's literally a refugee and came to America only speaking Spanish. Okay. So I can tell you the separations at the border that you've heard about on the news, the point with CNN and MSNBC and New York Times and all these places is to get an emotional reaction out of you. They got it from a lot of you. The reality is there's 20,000 women and children trafficked every year at our border. If we do not separate children and the adult that they're with when they come across, we run the risk that they are with a trafficker. So separating them at the immediate detention facility, their temporary detention facilities at the border, if we do not do that, then we do not know who they're with. We have to separate to establish familial connection. How we do that is, a lot of times these kids are scared of the trafficker they're with, and they will lie if you leave them together. And at the beginning, when they're asked by the law enforcement, they tell them, yes, they're my dad or they're my mom or whatever it is. But what happens later on? They separate them. They start questioning them. They say, what's your dad's birthday? What's this? What's that? Then they ask the other person, the man that they came with, those same questions. They find out they have different answers to those questions. So then they do DNA analysis, and that takes a while. Admittedly, the DNA process should be faster than it is. And that's something they're working on. They are working on a faster DNA process. But then what else you have to do, if it is their family member, say it is their dad, then they have to go back to the consulate in Mexico and they have to say, hey, is there any reason that this dad should not be with his child? Is he maybe perhaps a molester? Is he somebody who has been charged with a crime? Did he kidnap his own child from the mom? These are questions that have to be answered at the border. It's not an easy process. But you do have to answer these questions. And there seems to be this idea that there were lost children. Okay, there were no lost children. That's another thing that the media they totally they mischaracterized on purpose. They knew what they were doing. They wanted to have, your person reading a headline think that there's actually missing children, and there's not. So what happens is when a kid comes over and they don't have a parent, they don't have an adult with them, and they come over with just a sign on them with a phone number, what happens is at the border, they get in contact with the person that would be their sponsor, okay? When the kid then gets given to the sponsor, okay, and they establish a connection, they give it to the sponsor, they still check in with those sponsors, okay? So when they check in with those sponsors, if they do not get a response from them about court dates, about things like that, they then consider them missing, okay? That doesn't mean missing in the same traditional sense as a missing child and that's an American citizen. It's missing in their system as in we have not gotten the follow-up. But that is the terminology they use. So then the media then says, oh, DHS or CBP or whatever, they lost these children, or they'll say ICE. A lot of times they actually say the wrong organization in general. But that's because they don't know what they're talking about. They've never been to the border. They don't know how this all works. And that's part of the ignorance of not just, the people who spout this stuff, but our media. Our media has so many young people who went to college for journalism school, and their journalism teachers were actually political activists, and they'd never taught them how to actually run a story down. And it's embarrassing that I'm not a journalist, and I have verified every time I put a story out. I have verified it with multiple sources, and I've actually dug deep on it and made sure that you can trust what you're reading. Even our biggest media outlets don't do that anymore. They talk and talk and talk and talk. They have these pundits on who don't know anything. And there's rare exceptions, but it's few and far between.
Absolutely. And I want to, this is a great point to bring up while we're here, is that Democrats, especially the ones who are virtue signaling about issues at the border, are actively incentivizing and telling people in Mexico or all over the world, come to our country. Our borders are open. We want you. That is the most toxic, harmful, irresponsible thing that you could possibly do, to tell people who are vulnerable that when they come across the border, they will have the American dream and promise, and that they deserve it. Come. It's their white guilt speaking, maybe. I don't know what it is, but there's their ignorance at asking people to come into our country illegally, and even having their, they have legal nonprofits where they send attorneys down there and teach them how to bypass our legal asylum system to get into our country. What they're doing is so irresponsible and so disgusting, because what happens when those people come over? All right. Unless you're going to take a child and their family into your home, pay for their health care, pay for their food, help them get a job, and take care of them, then you are a complete hypocrite. And it is so disgusting and irresponsible to tell vulnerable people that are in Mexico or any other country to come into our country, that you're for open borders, when you plan on doing nothing, zero, to help these people once they get here. And you're completely negating the Americans that are here already who need your help, our veterans, our children that are in the foster care system, our children that have gone missing, our children that are already here that we're responsible for, that are unaccounted for because of our open borders issue. They're here. We're responsible for these children, and we can't even take care of the children in our own backyard. But you're telling other mothers to risk coming here for the American dream that you have no intention of helping them with. It is so toxic. And please, if you ever hear any of your liberal friends or, other moms in the group talking about borders and the cages, if you speak up on anything, speak up on this issue, because you could potentially be saving a child, a mother, from being miseducated and incentivized to come here and be left to hang to dry. And you're putting children at risk, mothers at risk, families at risk of being separated, of being living in an old motel because there's no affordable housing in these, especially in California. We all know what's going on there, right? It's so irresponsible, and we have to hold these people accountable when they start virtue signaling about this issue. It is dangerous. It has real ramifications for these people. So if you care about people of the world, children of the world, other mothers, children's in other country, don't tell them to come here illegally. It is dangerous. It is destructive. They will get raped on the way here. They'll get raped while they're here. They are putting a sign on themselves saying, I'm vulnerable, traffic me. Because you know what these traffickers do? What are you doing?
Oh, I'm just showing people the former DNC chairman wearing a T-shirt that says "Yo no creo en fronteras," which means I don't believe in borders. Okay, it goes into what you're talking about.
But the thing is, these traffickers, they are smart. They will look for the most vulnerable kids. They're looking for the easy target. They're looking for the girls at the mall walking around with no parents. They're looking for the foster kids waiting outside a court that don't have a parent picking them up. They're waiting outside of schools for the kids that get left behind that weren't taken to an aftercare program. They're looking for the vulnerable. They're looking for the ones that just came from Mexico, whose mom is trying to get a job, and they're left alone at a hotel or a motel. This is dangerous for them, and we have to protect these people and secure our borders and change the dialogue and information about it is not safe to come to America. And quite frankly, we aren't even, taking care of our own here. We're not taking care of our children here. That's what our focus, that's what America First is about. It's about taking care of your own backyard. And that's a fundamental difference between the left and the right, is taking care of your own family before you virtue signal and tell other people how to live their lives and tell them what to do. You take care of your own family first. If your own family is suffering and is hungry and their health needs are not met, and you're out on the street helping other people, what kind of human being are you, really?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so that's why we decided to do this, because this is a political issue now. Everything is political because it's about what you stand for, voting your values. And it's important to dispel these myths of, when they say, oh, human trafficking isn't a political issue. It absolutely is. It is 100% a political issue now.
And I just want to finish I was holding up the picture of Keith Ellison. He was the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Okay, so the DNC ran the Democratic Party, wearing a shirt, Yo no creo en fronteras. And it means I don't believe in borders. It's tied to an organization that actually went down in Mexico. All these, they're all Democratic aligned activist groups, went down to Mexico, went down to Central America since Trump has been president, and have told people there that you need to come and bring a child. If you bring a child, they'll let you in. They were actually helping create the surge at the border and helping organize those. Remember the caravans that came to the border? Those were organized by Democrats. And guess who was part of those caravans? They actually had child traffickers embedded in those types of caravans coming in. Because as you come in with a surge, what easier way to get in than have law enforcement have to deal with thousands of people at the same time, or hundreds of people at the same time? Obviously some people will get through. And so again, you go back to the very beginning of this, we talked about the 20,000 people we know about that are trafficked every year, women and children. That's what we know about.
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay?
We don't know. We have no idea.
It goes further and further. And, I think you go through all these issues. You go through open borders, Planned Parenthood. You go through, their fight for sex worker rights and sex rights, and them putting Planned Parenthood in the classroom to teach kids about sex ed. We're literally putting the people who stand to profit if kids are not educated on safety.
We're putting sex worker right activists
in the classroom,
charge of teaching our children how to prevent sex.
Doesn't make any sense. Like this shouldn't be political, but it is. And if you're voting for Democrats, you need to be aware of this. That this is what you're voting for. And this is not an extreme, this is not a fringe. There's proof of this happening all over our country.
Planned Parenthood promotes the sexualization of children agenda that's happening. They actively are involved in film, TV, Nickelodeon, Disney. They have people that work in Hollywood to lower the sensitization of sex for our children. Yeah. All right, they insert these ideas into media. That's why media is really dangerous for children. It's probably the best thing you could do is eliminate the media and get our kids focusing on other things, because what they're doing is poisoning our kids. And Planned Parenthood has pole dancing classes. They have these sex activists. They've taken over Girl Scouts. They have infiltrated all of academia and all child-related activities, Boy Scouts of America, Girl Scouts of America, to essentially use it as a political, ideological indoctrination web. So we really have to wake up to what they've done. There's no way right now we're going to go back on the academic part of it
can I address
without homeschooling our children. I mean, there's just no way. So all we can do right now is focus on culture and calling out what the sexualization agenda and taking action to undo that.
Yep. So I saw somebody dropped in. I'm looking at the questions now. Any questions you guys asked? I'm going through the comments. If there's any question you haven't asked yet, go ahead and type it out now. I'm looking, and I saw somebody dropped an upload file link to a lawsuit that claims that Trump raped a 13-year-old. So I do want to address this. That is, so this case was created by a former Howard Stern producer who is a male. I'm sorry, Jerry Springer producer, who is a male, not a female, okay? And this man has been reprimanded by courts before for creating cases where he falsely claims that young women were raped by celebrities, okay? This is not a serious thing. This is why the media, if you're wondering, why hasn't CNN, I mean, are you guys serious? If this had happened, CNN would be all over it, MSNBC would be all over it, all of these We knew about this years ago. All of the news outlets vetted this. They found out that it was this same guy who had done this multiple times to other people. It's not a real deal. It's fake, you know. But I've seen this actually. It's the second time I've seen this in the last 2 weeks of somebody putting this in one of our live streams. So I do want to address it. If you're unaware, make sure that when you see this, you make people aware of that. And surprisingly, Huffington Post ran a piece that tears this whole story apart. You wouldn't expect that to be the place who did it. So I'll give them credit where credit is due. They tore this story apart and said, hey, look, this is totally false. People need to stop sharing this for that reason. It's not true. So going through you guys' questions.
While you're looking for a question, I want to mention something. In 2011, a journalist at the Boston Globe reported that up to 5,200 Pentagon employees with top security clearances were engaged in child porn on government computers. So that gives you an idea of what an issue this is, if this is happening in our government, all right? And who was the senator? The Republican senator, Grassley, tried to get the inquiry into the Pentagon, but the Pentagon refused to cooperate, claiming it wasn't a priority. So it was a Republican that stood up to try to address this child porn issue, this epidemic of child porn happening on government officials' computers. I would like to point out that the Department of Defense Computer Forensic Laboratory investigated that they said that we have more cases than they can handle of this issue. In 2015, the Associated Press investigated and found that the single largest category of inmates in military prisons were child sex trafficking, child pornography. This is such an issue. And why is there such a demand for child pornography in our country? Why is more than half of child porn being made here in the United States? Because there is a demand. What is driving this demand? Porn and porn culture. Who supports porn and porn culture? The left does, right? This is the sex rights framework. They even on SNL, they did a skit promoting trafficking hub, Pornhub. Pornhub doesn't require age verification or consent verification. What does that mean? That means that there's trafficking victims that are actively uploaded and abused and exploited on a daily basis, and nothing is done about it. Nothing. And who fights for porn workers, sex workers' rights, and all these porn websites? The left does. Planned Parenthood does. It's dangerous because they do nothing about it. You know, I want to say that why children? Because porn is a drug. It's a drug. It's like heroin. Nobody gets on heroin and says, "Oh, you know, that felt so good, but I'm only going to do this once a month." It's the way that the porn works, and I really encourage you to learn more about this. It's a sensitization process. Okay, so it's not enough. Just like an addict, it's not enough for that little hit. It has to get bigger to elicit that same neurotransmitter response to feel pleasure. And unfortunately, all of these algorithms are set up to, you know, promote these more extreme fringe sexual behaviors. And eventually, it's not enough to just watch something crazy. Eventually, it evolves to the point of children. Hold on one second. I want to finish this with children. And so that is why we have a demand. Without the porn culture and porn, we don't have a demand. And porn isn't solely responsible, but I want to point out it's a grooming tool. You will not speak or hear from one trafficking victim that doesn't explicitly point out the role porn has played. They use it to groom children. They force children to watch the porn because they have to be educated on how they're expected to perform. When we stay silent, especially as men, I'm holding you more accountable. Yes, men, you accountable. When we stay silent on the issue of pornography, when you are deriving pleasure at somebody's pain, misery, exploitation, and brutal torture and rape, when you support networks that host this content and just say, well, I'm not looking at that. I'm not looking at children, or I'm looking at something else. When, by the way, there's no age or verification, no consent. So you don't know what you're looking at. The very least you could do is at least find some porn that you know where it's coming from. All right. But if you're going to support this culture, know what kind of world you're laying for your children, because our children aren't just at risk. We focus as parents, oh, our children are at risk of being trafficked. no, you know what? Your children are also at risk of becoming traffickers, because there's nobody who starts out in porn that doesn't eventually get desensitized to some point. And yes, some of them might pull out at that point. Some of them get rescued. Some of them wake up, but some of them don't. And that's why we have the epidemic of child porn, because they get to the point where they're viewing the images. And what did I explain earlier about the whole Bitcoin system, right? They have their devices. They trade. It's a trade. They have to, because it's their collateral. It's their safety mechanism to keep their porn within their network. That's how it works. So then they end up, if they want to view that porn so badly, they need their fix. They'll do anything, right? For drugs, they'll kill, they'll murder, they'll steal, they'll lie to get their drugs. It's the same thing. They will make porn. They will act on it. They will abduct children. They will do whatever they can to their sisters, their cousins, their nieces, to get their videos so that they can view other porn. This is the real. These are facts.
And it's really horrible, but it's true. It's horrible, but it's true. I did want to address this. I saw this comment, and I've seen it before. High Decline said, "Keep on truth spreading, people. I'm ashamed to say I was a lifelong Dem and converted this year, and there is hope. People are definitely starting to see what's up, so don't give up. Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed that you were a Democrat. Be proud that you have woken up to the truth." I think one of the things that holds people back from really researching and embracing what's really going on is this idea that I'm wrong. I've been wrong. I can't be wrong.
We've all been wrong about something at some point.
I'm too smart of a person to have missed this. And the reality is, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have made a mistake, to have had your eyes closed. And it's okay to admit that. But you can reframe it into being proud of waking up. So
and helping to wake up others, because only you at your point of waking up know what it was like to feel and to be exposed to things that you were exposed to that made you have that awakening. So only you know that and can help others.
Next question, Philly Fanatic. Why was it okay to invite Cubans into the USA but not other Hispanics? That's actually a good question. It really is. And it's something that myself, we've talked about a bunch. So I'm probably harder on immigration than a lot of people are in terms of Cubans. So here's my barometer for immigration. What is the government doing? Is your government killing people? Is your government stopping people from being able to form political opposition? Is it killing or jailing political opposition? And what is your nearest country that can give you asylum?
Your neighbor.
So for Cuba, the government was killing people, innocent people. It was jailing people for political opposition, and it was stealing people's property. Okay, it was doing all of those things. So clicks those barometers. Now, what is the closest country to Cuba, major country that can give them asylum? It is the United States, okay? And so it was a natural sort of place for refuge. Now, Mexico, we're the next closest country. So I will say this, they have that box checked, okay? Now, in Mexico, is the government killing people? Is it killing and jailing political opposition? And is it stealing people's property? It's doing none of those three things. Now, are cartels killing people? Yes. Are cartels, posing an issue in some parts of the country? Yes. Are they the government? No. So in Mexico, they still have a democratic system. They still vote for their president. They voted in a new president. What they need to do is vote in better people, take control of their country, but they still have a chance. Cubans didn't have a chance anymore when, wet foot, dry foot went on, which, by the way, Cubans still don't have the same opportunity. That opportunity was given. It is now no longer available. And that's something that I think, because I've been asked this question before too, to take it a step further, is should we still be allowing it from Cuba? I would say that we should still, because there's still a threat to being able to form political opposition in Cuba. People are still jailed for it. And so I think that if you're specifically claiming political asylum because of that you should still be able to. Now, should just anybody be able to for no reason, or say they are a socialist, and they just want to come to America? No, there's no good reason for them to come. But if you are still facing political opposition to the point where you could be jailed, absolutely, I think you should be able to. In Mexico, that's not the case. But if that were ever to happen in Mexico, I would support a refugee program to be able to save people that were basically political refugees. But that's just not the case there. But good question. Somebody asked before, and I can't find the question to highlight it, But somebody asked about Hollywood. They said, coming from Hollywood, I've directed Oscar-winning actors, actresses, and worked with like huge music stars. Landon's worked with huge music stars and actors. What is going on in Hollywood with child sex abuse and trafficking and all this stuff? I could say this because there's a lot of rumors out there. There's a lot of stuff out there. I think that you have to be careful with what you believe, but I will say this. There's absolutely a pedophilia problem in Hollywood. That is very real. And there are very important people in Hollywood who have engaged in this. I can give you a name like Bryan Singer, a director. I've said now for years and years and years and years, I have said that Bryan Singer has engaged in this with young men that are minors, and that if what I was saying was not true, Bryan Singer would sue me. He hasn't sued me. And I've been saying this for years and years and years and years and years and years. Okay. You can go search my Twitter account, Bryan Singer. I've called him out forever because I have, been told this by enough people, credible, that have been there, been around him to know that this is going on, to be able to say, hey, I need to say something. And I think that's something important. People in Hollywood do need to speak up if you know something exists. We always hear these people say, everybody knew this was going on. Well, I'm saying, I know everybody talks about this and knew it was going on. So I'm telling you, this is going on. This guy's been free. You also have, Dan Schneider from Nickelodeon. He worked with kids. That's another guy. FBI needs to get his hard drives, and they need to get them quick. They should have gotten them a long time ago. The fact that people like this have not been brought down is an indictment on the people in leadership at the FBI.
Right.
Leadership people who are not put there by Trump. There's been people on, they call it the 7th floor there, that have been there for a long time. And those people have been, let's say, very unhelpful to making sure these people go to prison. And we just saw recently this week, there was an FBI agent who was caught, admitted during a polygraph that they viewed child porn. And the FBI did nothing. They fired them. They didn't put him in jail. They didn't charge him. Nothing. Right. So, we got to be real about this. There's a problem there that has to be dealt with.
Right. And, I've been in Hollywood a long time. I've met a lot of these celebrities, women, that were girls, that were young Disney stars, that then became much bigger stars. I will never violate their personal stories and experiences. That's up to them. But I will say the majority have been sexually abused by people in the industry, have been groomed, and have even had their own parents complicit in this process. And people need to know that truth. And that's why I put out the tweet yesterday about how dangerous media is for our children and our families, because when they form these emotional bonds with these celebrities, they grow up with them. They follow the trajectory of their lives. They have an emotional bond, and it's dangerous because their experiences become your child's experiences. Their memories now become your child's memories. So instead of your child having the memory of them playing with their brother or sister outside building a fort, out of sticks, their memory is actually replaced by a memory of something that happens in a meaningless, stupid, superficial show with a Planned Parenthood representative running the script.
Yep.
Okay, so that's just a little microcosm. It's happening on a wide scale. How much media are we allowing our kids to consume? TikTok, same thing. There's an agenda here. And it's not a conspiracy theory anymore. We're waking up now to what is actually visceral evidence that we can see, tangible evidence that we can see. We're watching what's happened to our youth. You don't even need any evidence. Just look at what's happened to our youth. Look at why we have colleges turned into indoctrination centers, how we have this explosion of child sexualization, why we have drag queen story hour, why we have children that celebrities writing pedophilia tweets and getting away with it, and still having their careers elevated in their platform.
Well, Twitter just banned a bunch of people because Chrissy Teigen got upset that people were calling out her weird tweets. Mm-hmm. Now, were there people who went over the line and threatened her? Absolutely. And those people are stupid.
There's a great documentary, Out of Shadows, that if you want to know more about what happens in Hollywood, that's probably a pretty good one.
I would say you could probably answer this. It's not a question, but somebody said social emotional programs and restorative justice is socialism for bullying that they're pushing in school. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
could you explain that,
Yeah,
sort
I
of what
mean,
they're doing in schools with
absolutely.
these things?
The language is how they've started this whole thing. If you can change somebody's language, you control them. You change meaning of words. I mean, they're trying to change the meaning of racism now, the definition in the dictionary. Um, if we have no shared language, there is no shared truth. There are no facts anymore. You can change the meaning of words in real time to suit a leftist narrative and agenda. And the whole social emotional learning programs have been used as an umbrella to drive in these far left Marxist ideals and belief systems into our educational frameworks that they've baked in. And so that's why it's happened. We wonder, how did we let this happen? It happened because we trusted. We trusted. We didn't verify. We didn't ask questions. We didn't demand to be involved parents. And then you have leftist parenting gurus and experts that we have listened to that have said, our children, stop being so hands-on parenting. Don't be helicopter parents. You don't have to be a helicopter parent. You can let your kid get their knees dirty, and you don't have to be a helicopter parent in that sense. But as far as protecting them from evil sexualization agendas, yes, be a helicopter parent if that's what they want to call us. Because we care about our children, and we recognize that it is our responsibility, not the states, not the schools, not the teachers, not the political activists, to teach our children what our values are. And that's what we have to take responsibility for, is allowing everyone else to subvert our parenting and replace our parenting, replace our family values. And so that's happened. It's happened in schools, and it's already happened. So
I want to address that. You don't actually have a problem with any of this stuff. You're just anti-Democrat. Okay.
no,
Let me tell you
not at
something.
all.
I would love to love the Democratic Party. I
We
would love
voted
to just.
Democrat. We used to
I
vote
voted in
Democrat.
2008 for Obama. I do believe it was one of the biggest mistakes ever made. Although, if Obama had never been president, we would have never gotten Trump. So you could argue that maybe it was a good thing. But I was very confused at that point. I just thought that to be a nice person, you had to vote that way. I was still anti-socialism. I didn't see him as a socialist, though. Because being the son of a Cuban refugee, I was very averse to socialism. But he said all the right things. He said he was going to be hard on illegal immigration. He said he was going to put America, prioritize America. And at the end of the day, those were things that on the very surface, without knowing about his policies really deeply, I believed to be a good thing. And being able to see as a business, growing as a business owner, okay, ending up employing and paying thousands of people, having children, being a father, these things wake you up. You see how policy works in real time, and you realize how things lead towards something really dangerous. Obama was the slippery slope to Marxism. And what we're seeing now in groups like BLM are a direct result of electing him. Okay, because BLM has in their platform, they're what we believe on their website. They say they want to destroy the nuclear family. They're not shy about it. Okay, the nuclear family is probably the most important thing to the health of America. Okay, the idea of wanting to destroy it is the idea of wanting to destroy America. Because having a father at home, having a mother at home, having two parents at home, okay, is probably the best. It's one of the top predictors of success. And it is the top predictor of whether or not you'll be in jail at some point in your life, aside from being a male. Okay. It is the top predictor. Do you have a father and mother at home? Top predictor of whether or not you're going to go to jail or not, some point in your lifetime. And that's what BLM wants to do away with. So that came as a direct result of electing Obama. So
Right.
You were incorrect in your assumption.
And I'd also like to bring up a point that, unlike the left, if you've noticed, all of this that we're talking about is action, is policy that we're honing in on. We've never once said that Democrats are evil people, ignorant, hateful. They don't care about human trafficking victims. No, we talk about the Democrat platform. Their policies do not care about human trafficking victims. They're directly opposed. So yes, when you do support those policies, your actions are not in alignment. So you can say you care about them, but your words are hollow if your actions aren't supporting that. And if Democrats are doing things to help human trafficking, let us know what they are.
I love this guy, Skinner Arts. That's not ranting. Somebody said you were ranting. One of the Democrats in here, and he says, that's not ranting. That's flooding anger in her. Don't stop it.
I'm not angry at all. I'm passionate.
I think you are angry deep down. You are. You're angry that this happens to kids. You're angry that people are not fighting to stop it. You are.
But I'm angry, but my anger is what
Channeled into something.
The injustice is what drives my passion. Because if I stayed angry, I wouldn't be able to function. I wouldn't be able to fight the way I do, because anger is toxic when you let it live in you. When you let it consume your soul, consume your day-to-day thoughts, it will destroy you. That's why you see so many angry feminists who look haggard. And I don't mean that as a superficial slight. They look miserable because they are. They have allowed anger, instead of fueling it to address the issues that they're passionate about, they've allowed it to consume them. So
That's
sorry.
That's definitely going to be a campaign ad against me one day, and I love it. No, I love it.
That's okay.
So it is true. I mean, who can deny it? I mean, honestly, this is something. Fact.
It's a fact. Yeah. Go to any facialist or something like that, they'll tell you, anger is bad for your health.
It manifests in there.
Anger is bad for your health. So if you're angry and you're righteously angry about something, whatever it is, use it to process that into passion and to activism of some sort that actually changes what you're angry about. You have to be effective too. I mean, these feminists are not effective. They're not stopping patriarchy. They're not stopping anything in these other countries. They're not standing for these women that are beheaded and stoned in other countries. No, what do they do? National Hijab Day. That's what they do. That does nothing. It's virtue signaling. So their activism is hollow. It doesn't do anything. It's not effective.
How do we get more people to listen? I'll let you take that one.
That's hard because, obviously, our numbers are suppressed. We have evidence of that.
Tell them what happened to the Rand Paul.
I don't know the exact number because I don't pay attention to numbers, but
I do.
Okay, you should.
So I pay attention to our numbers strictly so that I can educate people on what social media is doing. So on YouTube, we recently had Rand Paul on, senator, and the interview went crazy. We had so many people watching it. Okay, within hours, it said 25,000 something on our YouTube live. Okay. Then later in the day, we noticed that it hadn't changed at all. It hadn't gone up. And then CNN carried it. Okay. CNN carried it and they ran it on Aaron Burnett. And still the views didn't go up. Next morning, I check it. It went down to 7,000 viewers. And I was like, that's weird. Mm-hmm. And what happened last night? I pulled it up and it now says it has 2,500 views. Thankfully, I screenshotted it each time. So, I've gone back to YouTube saying, what's going on? YouTube can't explain it. They have no idea what's going on. But it's almost like the view counter is going backwards. So keep going on.
Right. So it does make it hard when you have these big social media companies that act as the modern public square, when they are actively suppressing Republican voices or conservative voices. That's hard to break through, which is why we rely on y'all, spreading it, sharing it, word of mouth on your Facebooks. And yeah, they might suppress it on yours too. I have people reach out to me saying, I followed you and then it unfollowed me from you. My numbers they've stopped my numbers from being able to grow. It throttles all the time. So, you can't rely on actual algorithms to get it where you want it to go. So it's really about y'all. Y'all are the powerful people here, spreading the messages. So if anything resonates with you, please do share it, and make sure that people close to you that you interact with see it, and talk about it. Talk about how you felt about the post and how it affected you, and what action that you're inspired to take differently. And so I wanted to end, unless you have
no, there's more questions. I did want to say too, if somebody asks you about voting or about politics, you can even say, this is a channel in, as you can say, you know what, I don't know about all these other issues, but my primary issue is human trafficking. I want to stop human trafficking, child sex trafficking, and this is what Republicans have done for it. So I'm voting for them for these reasons, whereas Democrats support these, pillars that we laid out in the beginning. Planned Parenthood, sex worker rights, changing sex ed frameworks to something that glorifies pleasure instead of safety, and the fact open borders and defunding law enforcement. These are things that are not in alignment with ending human trafficking or ending child sex abuse. Mm-hmm. So those are things that's an easy way to bring it up and to be able to sort of champion those things. And what are they going to say? No, don't vote for that.
Mm-hmm.
that it makes the argument very hard for them to tell you not to vote that way.
Right.
And it also makes them think about, why am I voting this way?
If it goes off the rails too, always just gently remind them, say, hey, do you think we could, out of respect for one another, keep the conversation on policy and not on personalities and people? Okay, so no ad hominem attacks, no even attacking Trump, because you can not like Trump, that's fine, but let's keep it on his policy. What is his policy doing that's harmful? Talk about policy, policy, policy.
Somebody said that TikTok, they don't let their kid watch TikTok.
Good. Bravo to the parents that are not afraid to say no. That's what these kids need more. They need to hear no. They need to hear go outside. They need to hear boredom doesn't exist. It's an opportunity to be creative, to create, to innovate, to think, to reflect. We rob our children when we rob them of the time to self-reflect, to create, to be bored, to have that experience for them to. That's where creativity can emerge. So we rob them when we constantly entertain, which means to bind, to hold their attention.
Yeah.
And for what? What do they get out of it? What do they get out of watching TV? Pleasure. And what message does that send? That pleasure is derived by watching television. I mean, that's what we're reinforcing with constant media stimulation and allowing that to be, so prevalent in our lives. I'm not saying you have to be an extremist and say you're never allowed to watch television again, right? Robbie would probably kill me if I took the TVs out of the house.
I like my sports. So I'll take this question. What can Trump do the next 4 years to end the indoctrination by the left at colleges, schools, and the fact that 90% of media are corrupt leftists?
Defund them, that's for one.
We can use the funding, we can use that card. Yes, we can defund some of the federal money that goes into these universities. But beyond that, I would actually say that the priority is us parents. We need to be vocal. Parents are too afraid to ruffle feathers, okay? The reality is we need to have parents running for school boards. We need parents running these PTAs. We need parents that are not afraid to go to principals with other parents and organize and say, we don't want this framework in our school. We don't want this and that. What we have seen be the most successful to changing frameworks and have seen be the most successful to changing some of the indoctrination that's happening in schools and to stop teachers from doing some of the things they're doing, which we've talked about a lot. If you watch our streams, some of the stories and people and experts we've had on. The most success has been parents getting together, organizing, and being a voice for the kids. If you're not a voice for a politically neutral classroom, then you're gonna see the left take more and more ground. If you want to roll it back, the only way to do that's going to be really effective on a local level is getting together with other parents and saying, we should not be allowing this. And especially in public institutions, there are some laws that should be able to help you to demand political neutrality. And in private, it's a little harder, but with the parents at private school, if you get enough of them together, private schools respond to money. And if you and the other parents are really making a threat about pulling your kids from school, they will make changes.
And if you can't find any other parents, like when this started years ago for
then
us,
when you're the only one,
when you're the only one, we vote with our dollar every day.
Yep.
We vote with our dollar. When we buy our kid new shoes, are we buying them from China? Are we buying them from the U.S.? Everything is a vote. Yep. Everything. So, when we do it, yes, it's scary to make these changes. Nobody likes change. It's just because our brain doesn't. All of us, our brain does not like all these changes at once. It's too much, right? Take it one step at a time, one day at a time. Spend 5 minutes researching homeschooling. We're trying to do a lot of that legwork and give you guys great resources if you want to explore those things. But it doesn't. We don't have to feel overwhelmed by all of this. Just one thing at a time,
And remember, somebody made the comment in here that this isn't the Democratic Party anymore. This is not your parents' Democratic Party, is what I would say. Mm-hmm. It's not your grandparents or parents' Democratic Party. JFK would be considered a racist, homophobic, he'd be called everything.
Even everything Obama stood for.
And I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of what JFK did with Cuba, but I'm just saying that in general, all of his other policies and everything and the way that he prioritized family and things like that, in terms of policy, he would be considered a Republican now. he would be hated by the progressive wing of the party, which is now in control of the Democratic Party. They're really the progressive party now.
I can take this question.
Okay.
Aren't curriculum frameworks set by the state? Yes and no. There's frameworks that are like national recommendations, right? Like advice. And we're seeing this kind of play out with like the CDC and, there's these national recommendations. And then individual states get to decide how they want to implement them.
Where do most of the states get their curriculum from? Who do they watch? What state?
California.
California is the leading state for setting curriculum for other states. They all copy what California does.
I'll give you an example. So we moved from California thinking that we moved to a red state, a super conservative area, that we weren't going to have this issue in schools with school indoctrination. Wrong. And why is that? Is it because locally the teachers and everybody is, well, a little bit, because they do have hiring practices, which
favor Democrats being teachers.
But it was the NAIS, National Association for Independent Schools. If you look at that and you go and you dig deeper and you see what are their criteria, where are they trying to align their views
the ones
and their
pushing
agendas, right? And where do they get theirs? There's bigger associations. So it's really if you
and they shared that ideology with the independent school, the private school that we were in California.
Right.
So, and this is one of those things parents are unaware of, that there's organizations that schools get accredited by that push these ideologies. They actually give the school speakers to bring in, who in both cases were leftists. And they actually push certain books, push certain ideologies. So in private school, that's how it's going that way. But those frameworks, they really look at California and have in the past as a model for how they do this.
Right. So for instance, the NAIS recommended, all right, that teachers stop gendered language. So instead they're saying, hey, you all, instead of he or she, student or friend or thing, they want them to degenderize language and call Hispanic kids Latinx, right? Things like this. And schools here can choose, okay, maybe not this year. Maybe people aren't ready for that yet. So they try to groom them with other things, with other educational materials, particular speakers. Oh, if we can get this one speaker that specializes in gender identity to come talk to the parents, then we will groom them so that the next year we can get them to accept degendered language. This is how this works. Yep. It's seductive. It's elusive. And that's why the trust has been broken. We've trusted as parents. We've trusted that when you see an anti-bullying program, you're like, great, right? Sounds awesome. But then you look at it and you look at what they're teaching. And that's not what you're getting. What you see is not what you get.
So Skinner Arts, you said it says 45 viewers. You're talking about voting then. So no, we can see our number. That I actually noticed this because I was looking at the phone before. It was showing me a different number of people watching than it shows us here. Here it's showing us 60, and it's been above 60. It's been above 60. It's been between 60 and 200 the whole time.
When we started, it was at 100.
And then it went up to 200 and then it went down, and it goes back. It fluctuates. But it's not matching up with the live numbers you see there. So and
guaranteed when we upload this to YouTube,
it'll go down again too.
Even though this is the same live stream that we're uploading here.
You can't take any of this stuff seriously. You look at my Twitter account, okay? I'll show you the analytics. If you DM me, I'll send you a screenshot of the analytics. My Twitter reaches over 60 million people a month. But you look at the engagement rates, and the engagement rates don't line up. From one thing to another. It's just, we're aware it's happening, but as long as people are seeing it, I'm happy. I'm good. But people need to be aware that they're doing this on purpose to change the perception about it.
So that people look at it and go, oh, well, nobody's watching. Nobody aligns with these views.
Yep.
But we all know that's not true.
That's not the case. People are kind of getting attuned to the fact that this is happening. MPG20, I just wanted to shout you out. Protect your children from gender identity indoctrination. I believe in this 100%. Our daughter actually in California, she played soccer and basketball, and she had to play where they mixed gender. Okay. And they pretended that the biological male was, the same and all that stuff. And she actually got really hurt. She got attacked by one of the players in soccer. She was a tough girl. She finished the game, but she got totally tackled and beaten down to the ground in a way a girl could not do. Our daughter's very strong. She's a star soccer player, and in that game, she was killing the other team, and they were up like 6-0. And it was just the biological male taking out the anger on her. and it was very clear to everybody what was going on. You know, the ref comes in, but you could see too how they treated the situation differently because of the gender identity stuff. And they were teaching in school, you know, in California, it's now the case where they're teaching now in first grade. They're teaching kids about gender identity as a gender-bred man, you know, and that you have all these different options and all these different things, and that if the adults in your life say something different, they just don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
And so they're really, what they're doing is not just wrong in the sense that it's not science, it's not, you know, correct biology. But it's also undermining parents, and it's undermining your rights as a parent, and it's undermining, you know, just the relationship that a parent is supposed to have with their child.
Right.
That your child is, you're their ultimate teacher. And I still believe that, you know, even for the parents who were stuck in California because of work or whatever it is, you're their ultimate teacher. You need to remember that. You know, we're not their babysitters, we're not their minders, you know, whatever it is, we're their teachers, their ultimate teachers. And it is our job to make sure that they're prepared for the world in every way. So they need to know this exists. These ideas exist, but they need to understand the science of why this stuff is wrong. They need to understand the societal implications of it and all those things. So over time, you kind of have to educate them on that, because they're going to face it in school in these left-wing states.
And how that ties into the whole like trafficking and, you know, women being abused situation is that when you are not allowing gender, you know, women's shelters, you're not allowing gender safe sanctuaries for women that have been abused, and you're allowing men who identify as women, and that's no longer a safe rescue for women. So, you know, that's something that you're for it or you're against it. Do you want women to have the right to go to a women's shelter and with their children and know that they're safe and protected? Or do you want it to become a gender pot of, you know, I mean, it's nonsensical. It really doesn't work.
LRE Phase is trying to get some brownie points with you. They said, Landon, they know beautiful and intelligent women draw the biggest views, so that's why they suppress you.
Well, thank you for that.
Is China affecting and causing human trafficking to be worse by teaching their ideals?
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's very simple. Yes, I mean, I rail on the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, all the time. Their ideology, you know, communism in general requires you, and socialism. Socialism is really just communism in makeup. You know, they both require you to undermine the dignity of what it means to be an individual human being, and that's what human trafficking does too. You have to be able to undermine the importance and the sacred sort of existence of an individual to be able to human traffic and to sex traffic. You have to be able to degrade that to the point where it is a thing, not a person. And without those parts of their ideology, human trafficking would not be possible. If everybody believed in the dignity and respect of a human being as a human being, human trafficking and sex trafficking wouldn't be possible. So that ideology is shared with communists and with socialists, and China is the leading exporter of communism. So you have to be able to make that tie and that connection.
Yeah, we might have somebody at the...
We might have, you want to make sure it's not the trainer? We may have to get off.
No, it's not Robbie's trainer.
No.
Not my trainer. It's the dog's
trainer. Yeah.
We had a little issue.
Yeah, dog needs a little bit of help. Normally, I train our dogs all by myself, but I needed some help. They're not here. I need some help with one of them. He keeps running off.
Our neighbor is a dog trainer, so
yeah.
That's what,
and we have one that just keeps running off and will not listen about staying home. So it's kind of funny, actually. Whenever we let him out to go potty, he goes crazy, especially if he sees a deer, and he'll go off and he won't come back for 15 minutes. And it doesn't matter if we're sitting there the whole time screaming for him.
So any other questions before we hop off? We don't want to miss.
Yeah, this is a long stream today.
Yeah, so thank you guys for sticking with it and listening.
Lots of great comments, too.
Yeah.
Lots really of great comments. And thank you, everybody, too, who says, God bless you, too. You know, it's sort of interesting. I think years ago, I wouldn't have fully appreciated that. We were talking about this last night. You know, I used to think the idea that there was like evil spirits out in the world and stuff was kind of hokey. It was kind of a crazy idea that they were really these evil beings or evil energy or whatever it is out there. But as I get older and as I learn more, I really see that there is a deep evil in the world that is fighting goodness. And so whenever I see somebody giving that kind of positivity, it actually means something to me now. I think it's something we have to do more of with each other.
Absolutely. I mean, there's evil. I mean, whether you're religious or not, there's evil. There's people that, uh, worship Satan. There's people that are in these cults that want to hurt children. Um, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's something that is happening. And anybody that works in trafficking work, in these task forces, in law enforcement, you can ask them. This is real. This darkness that's on our planet right now, where children, where young children, we're not just talking pedophiles and little in pictures. We're talking horrible, horrific rape, torture videos. That's what we're talking about.
Can I answer this, please? Meerkat Watcher asked, what is your science background? I had finished my first year of college by the time I was 16, and I did advanced biology during that year when I was 16. So I don't think you want to go the what's your education route with me.
Again,
no, but it's just funny. Like, I could be like all the leftists out there, and it could be my whole marketing message. Could be, oh my God, I was so smart in school. Like, that could be my whole deal. But I'm not like these people. Like, I'm not here to exist to, like, be a narcissist the whole time. Just assume that people, whether they have an advanced biology, background or whatever it is, they have a right to be able to look at the science. I believe in people's intelligence and ability to look at it and be able to discern what the science is. I'm not one of those people that says there's only two, things, okay? Because here's the reality. Biologically, there are XX, XY, that is male and female, or there's chromosome disorders, okay? Chromosome disorders have been known for a long time. They're extraordinarily rare, and I mean extraordinarily rare. And those are mixtures like XXY, XXXY, XYXY. There's all these different mixtures. And in those cases, there are genuine issues. And, you have the people who are born with both parts that, they're in a difficult situation. Those are science. That is biology. This new thing where you have all these people just claiming that, I can decide right now that I'm a female and I must demand that you need to call me a female or you're a bigot. That's not science. Mm-hmm. That's not,
But again, this is the same thing. I have to call it out. They don't attack. They attack the person. They attack your credentials. They don't ever speak on the facts that you're saying, on what you're saying, on the context of what you're saying. They're not calling out information, disinformation. They're just attacking us as individuals. They're saying we're not educated enough, or we're not experts in this or that. Focus on the content of what we're saying and dispel that.
I'll leave you guys with this, because apparently Democrats got on our feed at this point. There's a bunch of trolls.
Party, y'all.
So I want to address one last thing. JD Gamble said, if you're making this issue a partisan issue, you are disgusting. You are missing the point if you don't think this is a partisan issue. Go back to the beginning of this stream, watch it. We laid out all the reasons why this is a partisan issue, unfortunately. I wish it was not. I wish we could just have differences on taxes and on, which healthcare plan's the best or whatever it is. I wish we could just have differences on things that are policy driven. But this is a moral imperative. And it is something that we can't deny the evil of. And Democratic policies are helping support it. I laid them all out. I also gave you where you can go to get a full list of everything Republicans have done to fight this, okay? Go back to the beginning of the stream, watch it, challenge yourself, okay? I voted for Obama in 2008. I am not this person who's just been a lifelong, I hate Democrats person. That's not me, okay? I wish we were at a place where we could just have these differences of opinion. And yes, I moved right in life. And yes, I am going to be a diehard Republican for the rest of my life. But I had that background. I want to be able to just say we disagree on these policy things. But you need to be able to be willing to look in the mirror and admit that there's a problem here on the left with the policy, enabling human trafficking, enabling child sex trafficking. We laid it all out. It's very clear. I appreciate everybody watching today, no matter what your political ideology is, because if you're on the left and you stayed to watch this whole thing, you were challenging yourself. And I appreciate that. And whether we disagree on other issues, whatever it is, I hope that you consider what we said here and you think about voting differently in this upcoming election strictly on this issue, because your vote can determine where your party goes in the future. And your party can see that they don't win power with these policy initiatives and that they need to go back closer to the center, and they need to get away from these things that are dangerous for women and children all over the world.
Thank you all for watching.